Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Writers Chat. We're so glad that you're with us, whether you're here live with us in the community or if you're watching the replay. My name is Johnny Alexander. I'm joined by my co-hosts, Norma Poor and Brandy Bro. And I'm going to turn it over to Brandy so she can introduce our guest.
Hi, I'm excited to introduce our special guest today. We've had him here before, and we're so happy to have you back again, Larry. Our guest is Larry Leech, and let me tell you a little bit about him. Editor-in-chief and acquisitions editor at Bold Vision Books, Larry J. Leech II has spent more than 40 years working in words. With a 23-year journalism career, Larry moved into freelance writing and editing in 2004. He has ghostwritten 30 books, that's impressive, and edited more than 400 manuscripts. I find that even more impressive. His freelance clients have won more than 70 awards in the last 8 years, and that is amazing. Larry, you are such a treasure to have here. We thank you so much for coming back to Writers Chat today.
Randy, thank you, and Johnny and Norma for having me back. It's always a pleasure to be with other writers, either in person or in Zoom calls like this. So thank you again for having me back. I don't even know where to start today. I'll be honest, I read through my notes last night, and this topic has become pretty dear to my heart recently because in working with coaching clients or editing manuscripts, I've noticed a couple things that have been difficult for writers, particularly new writers. And scrolling through the faces here, I know we have some veteran writers. I've noticed over the years that a lot of Christian writers have difficulty writing conflict, particularly in novels. And as we know, conflict drives a novel. If you don't have good conflict, you really don't have a good story. If you don't have a good villain, like like my my favorite here, Darth Vader, you don't you don't have you have to have a good villain to have a good story because you have to have someone pushing against what your protag wants. And I've noticed recently that humor is something that is missing in a lot of manuscripts that I work with. And I wonder too if that's because we as believers, we have a certain mindset. Okay, we're kind, we're gracious, we're compassionate. Okay, and sometimes being snarky isn't a person's personality, or being goofy. My wife and my friends will tell you I'm an absolute goofball. I love to enjoy life. I love to have fun when I teach, just whenever. So humor in some ways comes natural to me in my writing, but I know others, I'm seeing others struggle. And last June or July, drove away from our church, and I'm just giving you a little bit of background why I picked this particular topic. I drove away from our church near Greenville, South Carolina, and I'm an old rocker. I'm 60 years old. I love some of the old rock music, so I love Queen. And Queen's song came on the radio. Yes, I still listen to radio. I don't listen to Sirius or any of those. Let me entertain you. And I thought, oh, that's a pretty good title for a workshop.
Mm-hmm.
Because I thought, okay, what can I expand my list? What can I add to my repertoire? So I noodled on that for a while, and I thought, we need some kind, like romance. We need some kind of humor in a story.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we don't, think about and I draw a lot of examples from pulp culture. So I'll reference a lot of TV shows and a lot of movies because while book examples can be great, I mean, there's a handful of people here today, maybe 15, 20. If I reference a certain book by Lynette Easton, maybe one person has read it. Okay. But if I reference Hunger Games or Titanic or any of the Star Wars movies, Castle or Frasier or Friends, there might be a greater number of people who have seen those shows or movies. So I often pull from there. So think about Titanic, okay? Very emotional love story. What if there was no humor in that?
Mhm.
Because we know when, based on a title alone, we know the boat sinks.
Mhm.
Okay, no big surprise. So we head to the theater, we know the boat sinks. But for many, many years, Titanic was the #1 grossing movie in America until James Cameron's next movie, Avatar, came out. Okay. And why was that? First of all, it was the romance between Jack and Rose. All right. And because they're on the Titanic, we know there is an urgency to that love story because it's a basic love story. I mean, it could have been set against the civil rights movement, the Civil War. I mean, he could have put the backdrop anywhere. But we also needed some humor in there because there are some high tension, high anxiety moments. So, how do we drop that humor in without offending a reader, because we're writing? How do we not offend the reader? How do we not upset them? So, one of the things I want to do is talk about 5 things. I do have 5 fingers here. Um, See, there's my humor coming out, Johnny. um, I'll talk about 5 things today that we could lean on to incorporate some humor in our writing. Um, but I want you to, before I even get into those, um, any category but horror. I don't know what you mean by that, Pam. So maybe we'll touch on that at some point. Um, when you sit down and think about the humor in your story, draw on your personal experience. Oh, okay, Pam, sorry. I'm not reading all the chat. I just caught your comment there about horror. Think about your personal experiences. Okay. I have 2 younger brothers who live in Central Florida. My wife and I moved from there to the Greenville, Spartanburg area almost 4 years ago now. When we go back home, Florida's home, I like to get together with my younger brothers. And we like to get together with my mom. So when the 3 of us get together, even if it's just 2 of us, particularly when it's the 3 of us, we do nothing but bust each other's chops, poking fun at each other. Sometimes verbally, sometimes, not aggressive physical, but a lot of times we're just sparring back and forth very quickly, fast banter, whatever. And my wife has pointed out that my mom likes to just sit with a smile on her face and listen to her boys. Okay. It brings mom, I didn't think I'd get emotional on this one. It brings mom a lot of joy to see her boys like each other. Okay. And one of the ways we express that is to goof around and have fun. So when you think about humor for your story, think about family situations, comments that were made. Um, Male humor is different than female humor. Um, you know, Women like to joke around too. Um, and when you incorporate this humor into your story, whether it's verbally or with action, make sure it's true to the gender. I'll give you an example. Excuse me. I edited a manuscript probably within the last year, and the author had 2 women high-fiving after something exciting happened. And I questioned her about that because in all my years of editing and, you know, I didn't do a count here, but I'm assuming most of the people here today are female. Okay. This is a very female heavy industry. Um, I like to work at my branch office, which is internationally known as Starbucks. So I'm around and I see women often. I don't ever recall seeing women high five. Okay. Guys do it all the time. And I see some couple people shaking their head, but she said she and her friends do this. And I'm like, okay. So my point is just make sure that the humor, the actions, the words, um, are true to the gender that you're writing. Okay. Um, I don't, do women fist bump? I'm not seeing it, but that doesn't mean they don't. I see someone shaking their head, yes. So okay. Um, but lean on personal experience to write some of your humor. You could even use some of the words, some of the stuff I've said to my brothers and they've said back to me has crept into some of my suspense fiction. So, um, but it's like, excuse me, humor is very much like emotion. Okay. It is an emotion. And when I wanted to improve emotion in my stories, I studied two people. Please don't hate me when I say this first one, Stephen King. And the reason I wanted to study Stephen King was the fact he is the master, as many of us feel, of having you hold a book white knuckled. Okay. And he does it because he is constantly tapping an emotional button. It's with a word, a phrase, a clause. It's never a full on paragraph describing some kind of emotion. It's just constantly tapping the fear button. I also studied Nicholas Sparks for a very different reason because he tugs at the heart. He just makes everyone swoon. Okay. So I studied those two guys to improve um, emotion in my stories. Humor, in a lot of ways, is the same. You don't want to spend a lot of time setting up a joke. Humor in writing is a word, a phrase, a look. It could be a clause. It's just tapping that button. So keep that in mind when you write humor into your story. Um, Stephen James is real good at making readers hold books white knuckled or electronic devices. Um, but I had already read a lot of Stephen James, so that's why I went with Stephen King and Nicholas Sparks. So keep in mind that your jokes, your comments are very short and sweet. Um, what's that saying go? Keep it simple, silly. We'll go with silly instead of stupid.
Or sweetie,
Stupid.
I've heard, yeah, keep it simple, sweetie.
I've not heard that one. That's a good one. Stupid sounds a little condescending. So we'll go keep it simple, silly, because we're
Got it.
talking about humor. So we'll go with silly. All right. So why do we need humor in a story? Because if we don't have some kind of humor somewhere, it's just full on tension. I often think of the middle movie, the middle book of the Hunger Games series, Catching Fire, one of my favorite stories for a lot of reasons. One is the arc of Katniss's character. Okay. And I always go down when I talk about character arc because the middle part of the story in the Hunger Games trilogy is a story. So in the middle part of the story, something is pushing down on the protag. Okay. So that's why I go down. In the middle part of Katniss's story, all right, the worst things have to happen to her. So when Suzanne Collins probably plotted this out years ago, because I'm a big proponent that if you have a trilogy or a series, maybe 7, 8, 9, like J.K. Rowling did with, I believe it's advantageous to plot out the entire story, whether it's 3, 6, 10, whatever. Because if you don't, what I've noticed, and this is a little aside, people have a tendency to paint themselves into corners that you have to try to figure out. Rian Johnson did that to J.J. Abrams in the last Star Wars trilogy. Anyway, back to Catching Fire. Catching Fire is at a very emotional, distraught time for Katniss. When Suzanne Collins plotted this out, I'm sure she went down a list of things that she could have done to Katniss to make life miserable. Kill her mother? She didn't really like her mom anyway, so I don't know if that would have carried the story. Kill Gale? Probably not, because she had Peeta. Kill Peeta? She could have gone back to Gale. All right, so no big deal there. Prim, I don't know that killing Prim in the middle book would have carried the story. We needed that at the end of the third story near the resolution. The worst thing that could have happened to Katniss in that story was put her back in the games. And there's a very telling line in the movie and in the book about halfway through when Katniss and Peeta sit in the room waiting to see the game master, and Katniss looks at Peeta and says, "How are we going to kill all these people?" You hear how distraught she is in that moment. Okay. Now, if there's no humor in that story anywhere, then we are white knuckled the whole time, and it's difficult for us to breathe, because pacing in a story is something that is very important, and humor allows the reader to breathe, even for a moment. One of the funny moments to me in Catching Fire is when, and some people may find this offensive, and it just depends on where you are with your belief system and all of that. After the tributes have been interviewed by Caesar Flickerman, and Caesar Flickerman brings a lot of humor to the Hunger Games franchise, because he's just bubbly and goofy, and Stanley Tucci does a great job. He's got that look on his face all the time. It's just, ha, 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 ha. Okay, so he brings some humor. But one of the funny parts to me in Catching Fire is when Joanna rides up in the elevator with Katniss and Peeta and Haymitch. All right. And she's in her, Johnny, you're shaking your head, so you know where I'm going with this. She's in her tree outfit, and she just takes it off right there in the elevator. And a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, it's humor, because who does that? It's a shock value that either makes you cringe or laugh. Okay. So even in one of the, Katniss is getting ready to go into one of the worst situations of her life, if not the worst. There's a touch of humor. Real quick, move on. Because the look on everyone's face, and this is easier to portray in a visual, obviously, but you can still do it with words. If you want to learn, I'm going to do a lot of asides today. I'm sorry. If you want to learn how to write good visuals, watch Stephen King's The Green Mile with Tom Hanks. Okay. Then go back and read the serials, because Green Mile was not a novel. It was 428-page books that later, I think the publisher put them together as a novel. But watch the movie, particularly the scene where the bugs come out of Coffee's mouth, John Coffee's mouth. Read how Stephen King describes that. That is a great way to learn how to do certain visuals in writing, so that we see it. See it first and then study how he did it. So even in our own writing, great visuals will help illustrate humor. It could be a look. We see looks often in visuals and movies. I mean, Castle. There are a lot of looks between Castle and Beckett. Okay. To me, one of the greatest scenes in Castle. All right. And this isn't humor, but again, this goes back to writing visuals. It's at the end, I think it's season 4. And she goes to his apartment and he opens the door and he is totally frustrated with her. The whole episode, they've been at each other's throats, been the culmination of the whole season. And he looks at her and goes, "What do you want, Beckett?" And she says, "You." And she runs in the door and they kiss, and then the relationship takes off and the series goes down because the sexual tension's gone. The romantic session, let's say it that way. All right. So there are a couple techniques here that I've pointed out that a couple instances study the Green Mile, how Stephen King writes different things in that movie. Nicholas Sparks is great for that too. I mean, it's a different type of emotion, but again, in romantic situations, much like humor, a look tells the story without any words. Okay. Um, so my recommendation would be study a couple of those if you haven't. So let me get into my 5 points. God, I've babbled on and on a lot longer than I intended to. All right, there are different types of humors, and you may have a character that just touches on a couple of these, or you may have a totally snarky character the entire manuscript. So again, just your character has to be true. If they're snarky at the beginning and there's no character arc there, first person is a great way to write snarkiness into a character. It's a little bit easier than in third person. So here are some types of humor. Satire. This type of humor looks at faults of others. It is often used as constructive social criticism. So satire. This is probably one that we'll see a lot in writing, self-deprecating humor. This, instead of making fun of the character makes fun of themselves. Okay. Situational humor. Describe an everyday Monday situation that is actually funny. The humor in this type arises not from the use of words, but from the events itself. Understatement. Take an event that is a big deal and deliberately undermine it. Here's an example from Catcher in the Rye. When a character says, I have to have this operation, it isn't very serious. I have this tiny little tumor on my brain. Okay, that's just a quick touch of humor there. Overstatement, making a big deal out of something rather trivial that can amuse the reader. And then dark humor. Remember the many memes about the 2020 lockdown. That is dark comedy. You know, a character can make fun of something from that. All right, so those are a handful of types of humor. So here's 5 ways to include or improve humor in your story. We all like a good belly laugh, right? Love to hear a joke where we just double over. But for me, I get the biggest kick out of the interaction between my wife and I. Just the little giggles. I'll say something and she just has this cute little giggle and it's gone. Okay. So in your story, aim for smiles, not laughs. Okay. Just again, this goes back to what I've talked about with emotion. Just touch the button ever so slightly and move on. Okay. Big laughs, on one hand, tend to derive from shock tactics and crude shortcuts. While you may laugh loudly at the time, the effect is short-lasting and quickly forgotten. To be humorous in fiction, you don't need your writing to be a series of gags. Humor that stems from dialogue and character can often be much more appealing over the long term. And I will put these 5 points in the chat when I'm done. Okay. So when you write, go for smiles. How many times have, excuse me, you've read something and it just brought a smile to your face? even in movies, I'm going to go back to Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back. Again, the middle story in a 3-act play of the trilogy. Okay, so the worst things have to happen to the rebels. I mean, the Empire has to get bigger, stronger, so they're pushing down. One of the things that the Empire does is they seize Han and they want to put him in carbonite. And they're standing there there's a whole group of people, stormtroopers, Lando Calrissian, Princess Leia, Han, obviously Chewie, Vader, Boba Fett. And it's emotional, it's high tension because it's a very real possibility Han Solo is going to die. And seeing it in the first time in the movie, we don't know if he will survive this or not. Okay, so we're all sitting there on the edge of our seats. And Leia says, I love you. And Han says, I know. Okay, in that initial moment, it's not funny, but when you step back, that's kind of funny that he could be that arrogant, that he can't even say, I love you back. He's just like, I know. Some people may look at it as funny. All these years, I've seen Empire 30, 40, 50 times, a lot. It's funny now. It wasn't then, but all these years later, it's funny. So even in that dire situation, and think about the one-liners from Star Wars movies. One that you see all the time is Admiral Akbar going, "It's a trap." Okay, we see that on memes everywhere because people have pulled that line out, and it's funny now. Um, so even in the most intense situations, we can plop in just a touch of humor. And it's to get that smile, not a big, oh, I need to double over and laugh. Because this type of humor obviously is different. And if I'm repeating myself, I'm sorry. I guess it's a point that I feel like I need to stress. Comedians in person or on DVD, stream, video, whatever, sometimes they will take a couple minutes to set up a punchline. We really don't have that luxury in writing. There's a couple reasons for it. One, you'll bore the reader, and the last thing you want to do is bore a reader, because if you bore a reader with unnecessary information or detail, I'm done. And the other thing is, when I got into the industry, the benchmark for novels was 100,000 words. We have seen a shortening of that word count over the last 10 years, to the point that some publishers are even taking novels at 65,000 words now. And Chip McGregor wrote a blog 18 months ago that he's predicting, and Chip's a longtime agent in our industry. He thinks at some point we may even have novels at 45,000 words, which is novella length. And it's for a couple reasons. One, print cost is through the roof, paper costs are through the roof, and attention spans are about that long now. Okay. So we as writers have to hit it quick and move on. So we don't have the luxury of setting up a long joke. All right, number two. Before I explain number two, I want to read a couple things to you to see if you catch on what's going on here. Life, liberty, and a pursuit of happiness. Those are rights outlined in the Declaration of Independence. A Mars a day helps you work, rest, and play. That's been the candy bar slogan since 1959. Here's another one. Stop, look, and listen. That's what we do when we cross a road. Stop, drop, and roll. Fire prevention. Faster, higher, stronger. An Olympic motto. Here's another one. See no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. Two more. Snack, crackle, and pop. Rice Krispies. And the last one from Lincoln's Gettysburg Address: government of the people, by the people, for the people. All right. Did you catch the rhythm there, that everything was in threes? Every one of those examples was threes. So that is the next rule for writing humor, is use the rule of three. It's commonly employed by human writers, and it's a comedy writing secret. It's a pattern with two ideas and then subverting the pattern with a third incompatible idea. Now, the ones that I read don't follow that incompatible idea, but everything was in threes. Here's an example. Can I get you anything, sweetheart? Coffee, bagel, a divorce. That the third does not go with the other two. All right. And it's the rule of three that is why, if you understand this concept, you will start to recognize this in a lot of places. Another couple other places to learn a little bit about humor is the TV shows Frasier and Friends. Okay. About ago, TV Guide voted Frasier written comedy of all time. The interaction between Frasier and his dad, there's snarky comments constantly, but they both love each other. All right. The interaction between Niles and Frasier, if you're not familiar with the show, they're two very uptight, um, self-absorbed, well-to-do um, psychologist in Seattle. All right. Frasier's a spinoff of Cheers because he was originally there. So if you can watch some episodes of Frasier, you'll hear the bantering back and forth between Frasier and his dad, Frasier and Niles. Hilarious. Friends is another one, and I'll have to be honest, I cannot watch Friends right now since Matthew Perry died, because I know I will cry my way through any episode I watch. But Matthew Perry's character Chandler was the snarky one. He was the one always making the goofy comments, sometimes even at inappropriate times. But the humor there that Chandler portrayed, spot on, even if it's inappropriate. I mean, humor in your writing can be at the wrong time, and then someone can call them out for it, which is what they would do sometimes in Friends. But those two sitcoms, another one that comes to mind is Everybody Loves Raymond, King of Queens. I haven't watched any of the new sitcoms in the last 10 years. I kind of liked those four. Trying to think if there was a MASH. I mean, if you really want to go old school, go back to MASH. I mean, Hawkeye and BJ and Pierce. I mean, they had some great interactions there, particularly when they got on Winchester and oh my gosh, who was Hot Lips' boyfriend the first time? The Weasley guy that was
Frank.
married.
Yeah. His name was Frank, right? Frank?
Frank. Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there was some great comedy, and in all these sitcoms, there's always a main story and there's a subplot. Okay. And just listen to the dialogue, the interaction between the characters, because a lot of your humor will come out in dialogue. All right. So back to the rule of three. It is a set pattern with two ideas and then subvert that pattern with a third incompatible idea. Okay. Uh, see if there's anything else. Comedic rule is often paired with quick timing, ensuing that the viewers have less time to catch on to the pattern before the punchline. Again, tap the button. Here's an example from the Dick Van Dyke Show. Boy, is that going way back. Can I get you anything? Cup of coffee, donut, toupee. Again, it's something completely different. Just like most comedic writing, the rule of three in comedy relies on building tension to a comedic release. In the case of rule of threes, tension is built with the first two items in a pattern and then released with the final item, which should be the funniest of three. So going back to the Dick Van Dyke, can I get you anything? Cup of coffee? Donut? Okay. Toupee? Well, that's different. That will make you laugh. All right. And then in doing my research, I ran across this I thought was interesting. One of the psychological secrets behind the rule of three is we like things with a beginning, a middle, and an end. And I thought that was very interesting. In general, if you're writing with the series of three, save the funny or word or phrase for the last item. I gave you a couple of examples. That way you have the maximum impact. All right. Yeah, that one's not funny. All right. Number 3. And believe it or not, I'm almost done. So we'll have a little extra time to chat. Use humor in dialogue. One way to insert humor, especially in fiction, is to add it to the dialogue. This doesn't only make the reader laugh, but helps them understand the dynamics between characters. And, I just said, using Frasier as an example, the interaction between Frasier and Niles and Frasier and his dad, a lot of it is in dialogue. And Friends with Chandler, a lot of it is in dialogue. And ironically, many times throughout the Friends series, the 10th season, Chandler admits he uses humor to mask some of his emotions when he's nervous or anxious about something. You may have a character that wants to do the same thing. And if they do, it's okay if you have them admit it at some point. It helps us understand that character arc. All right, number 4. I don't see everyone, but I'm sure most of us here know, don't use cliches. Big no, 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 no. Okay. Unless you want to use them for humor. Okay. It's true, cliches can be boring, and sometimes using them is considered lazy writing. We've harped on that, but not always the case. You can use cliches for comedic relief by twisting them and surprising your readers. Here's an example. When there's a will, there's a family fighting over it. Instead of saying if there's a will, there's a way, okay, they went completely different with that. So if you want to add some humor to a story, to your dialogue, to make it part of a character, don't hesitate to shy away from twisting a cliche around. And here's my last one. Use puns in smart ways. Puns are words that have more than one meaning, or words that sound the same but have different homonyms. Here's an example. Will glass coffins be a success? Okay, that sounds kind of morbid. Remains to be seen. All right, so those are the five ways that you could add humor or improve humor. Let me touch on them again real quick. I have to scroll back. Aim for smiles, not laughs. The rule of 3. Use humor in your dialogue. Don't shy away from cliches. And use puns in smart ways. And I know that's short. I'm sorry. It's but I want to do what I said you should do with humor in your writing. Just touch on it.
No, I think this was wonderful. Thank you so, so much. I especially, for me personally in my writing, appreciated the go for smiles instead of laughter, because I do write like romance and historical, so it's not humor at all really, but to know that that's okay just to go for those smiles and instead of like, because I'm not going to write the belly laugh kind of scenes in my book. So
Yeah,
that was actually very encouraging to think, oh, okay, that's a good thing. That's
good,
that's good to do
good,
that.
good.
Yeah.
Joni, let me ask you a quick question. Be- I have been sick almost the entire month. All right. So I did not have an opportunity to pull a bunch of examples that I wish I had time to do. So when this goes on YouTube, I assume that's where it goes.
Yes. Yes.
Will I be able to post in the comment section some
Sure.
examples?
Sure. That'd be
Okay.
that'd be great to do that. We'd love that. But I want you to feel comfortable that this has been really good with a lot of great information,
Well,
and we
well, thank you.
appreciate it. But yes, it'll go up later this afternoon. So yes,
It
we'll
won't be
do it.
that quick, but
Yeah.
okay.
Sorry you're sick.
Yeah, it's we think I had COVID at the beginning of the month and I've just
Uh,
struggled to get over it. So
yeah. I'm really sorry about that. That's no fun at all, especially right after the holidays. So, no, this has been wonderful. So I do want to invite those of you who are off camera, if you want to come on and talk to Larry, ask him a specific question. I'm not sure we had a lot of comments. I'm not sure we had questions in the chat, but want you to do that. And I know I took off people, I think Brandy might have also taken off some people. If you're unable to get back on by clicking on start video or whatever the button is, please let us know in the chat so that we can bring you back on. Sometimes when we take you off, you're not able to do that. And we call that being in writer's chat jail. And we don't want anyone to be in writer's chat jail any longer than they have to be. So welcome to everybody here. Does anyone have a question or a comment for Larry while we have him here about humor writing or about his other writing experiences?
I would just like to say, excuse me, Johnny, I agree with what you said in that um, about what Larry, what you ultimately said, in that it's comforting to know that just to bring a smile works,
Mhm.
that it doesn't have to, humor isn't necessarily the deep belly laugh rolling on the floor. And I like that. And it immediately brought back to mind some of my favorite cozy mysteries where
Oh,
it's just a little chuckle or, just like you said, just makes you smile and it breaks that tension. So I
mhm,
really like that. And because I'm with you,
good.
Johnny, I'm not much of a humor writer,
yeah.
but that smile or that heartwarming kind of thing, I think is am I understanding you right, Larry? That's what you're talking about as far as a break in the tension.
Yeah. Because we've all read books or, we're just tight and just it's nerve-wracking. I mean, the first time that I read a Stephen James novel, The Pawn, years ago when it first released, the first chapter, it may have even been a prologue. We may have been doing prologues at the time. The opening scene was about two teenagers committing to each other that they were going to slice their wrist.
Mhm.
And I remember finishing that scene, holding the book while I laid on the couch. And I thought, if this book carries this out the rest of the way, I will not physically be able to hold my book to read it. And then, he went off and did his Patrick Bowers thing that we all know he's so great at doing. But, I don't remember any instances of humor in there, but you've got to give your readers a break every once in a while, or it's just too emotional to read and it makes it difficult to read. Sorry. All right, I have a question for all you guys. We start conference season in 3 weeks. Who's going to a conference in the first 6 months of the year?
I just came back from one, I told you guys at the beginning, and then
Yeah.
I'm going to Mid-South Christian Writers Conference in Memphis in March. I'm
Okay.
teaching a workshop there on tropes.
Oh, nice. Yep.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to be able to attend Blue Ridge this year for the first time. I'm so
Yay!
excited.
Congrats.
Yes.
I've been wanting to get there for years. My husband's retired now, so I can go like during the school year.
Hey, and make sure you and I connect while you're
Okay.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't seen you for at least one of the Philly conferences when we were still doing stuff in person. It's been a while.
Yeah. It has been a while. Yeah, I haven't done Philly since 2012.
Mm.
So
Oh.
it's been a while. But I'll be at Blue Ridge this year. So let's make sure we connect, please.
Okay.
Catherine's going to Mount Herman in March 22nd through 26th. That's great. Congrats to Catherine for that. Be fun. Other people
We have
going.
a question in the comments about humor. So we have one, how do you know if your humor is inappropriate for what you're writing?
That's where your beta readers come in.
Mm,
Rely on your beta readers and specifically ask if the humor is appropriate. Or if you have a writers group, I'm a big proponent of writers groups. Or if you're working with your writing coach, have your writing coach. They should flag it if it's inappropriate. So beta readers, writers group, writing coach, I would rely on them to see if they feel it's inappropriate.
It's almost like a sensitivity reader for humor.
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I've coached a lot of people who want to write YA. Well, they're 55-year-old white males.
Mm,
I'm like, okay, your dialogue sounds like a 55-year-old white male. Do you have any access to the youth group at your church? Have those kids read your manuscript and adjust your dialogue so it sounds like them. Same thing with humor. Just, you know, we can sit at Starbucks for a week, write a manuscript, throw it up on Amazon, and hope that we're the next Stephen King. Okay? That's not reality. It takes a group, it takes a team to get published. It can start with an accountability partner, a writing coach, writers group, beta readers, people that you ask for help, people who write ambulance scenes or fire scenes. I have them check with their local fire department, their local EMTs. Is this correct? Is this how the EMTs would talk to each other?
mhm.
Okay, so then you work with an editor or an agent, and at a publisher, there could be a marketing team, a launch team. I mean, should not do this alone. So pretty much every step of the way, I encourage writers to have some helps from somewhere.
Yeah.
All right, I'll get off my soapbox so I don't fall down and hurt my knee.
Yeah. And what conferences will you be at besides Blue Ridge?
The Asheville conference in 3 weeks, Cindy Sproul's conference, and then Linda Gilden's conference, the Carolina Christian Conference, and also be at the Novel Retreat in October. It's back at Ridgecrest again.
Oh, okay.
Maybe at Florida in October as well. I don't have anything planned in the summer.
I didn't know they were doing the October retreat again at Ridgecrest. Is this the first time in a while, or have I just been out of the loop and not known?
Last year was the first time, so this will be the
Okay.
second time.
Okay, that's great. Who's doing that now?
Edie is doing that one as well.
Okay.
Tusco Lee was the keynote speaker last year, and I'm not sure. Edie probably will announce at Blue Ridge who the keynote is in October.
Yeah, I used to go to that one when Yvonne Lehman did it. I was there a couple different times, and I will say to you all, it's very, very nice. It's not a conference, it's a retreat, and there is a difference, but
Yeah,
it's very relaxing and smaller.
yeah,
And you just get that individual kind of attention and time to write and time to
yeah,
pray and time to walk, and it's
yeah.
very, very well worthwhile. event.
I love the way Edie did it last year. If I could piggyback on what you
Sure.
said, she capped it at 50 people last year to make sure that it was small and intimate. And like you said, there's writing time, but I think there were 5 of us on faculty, maybe 6, and easy access, a lot of access with the attendees. We got to spend a lot of time with them, and um, it's a different pace. You know, Blue Ridge is because it's a lot of people go to pitch, so I call it a pitch conference.
Mm.
There's it's very intense for a lot of people, but the retreat was, I mean, we just relaxed and talked and got to know each other, and yeah, it's a different pace, different feel. It
It
was nice.
truly is. Well, thanks. I'm glad to know about that. That's wonderful. We also had a question, Larry, if you wouldn't mind talking a little bit about Bold Vision and what you're looking for and your role there and about the company.
Mhm. Um, George and Karen Porter have owned a company for a while, and they've done a great job. And they brought me on last April to
Mhm.
be editor in chief. And they've added acquisition editor to my responsibility recently. So I'm constantly looking at manuscripts, looking at proposals. We want to grow our fiction line right now. We've done a lot of devos over the last couple of years and a lot of nonfiction stuff. Karen's heart right now is to do some fiction.
Okay.
Um, a
Good.
lot of poet, a lot of people in the industry aren't doing YA right now. A lot of other publishers, but that is something that we're leaning toward. We have someone who is connected with us. His name is Aaron Zook, who has published 5 novels with Bold Vision. They center around 2 teenage boys and their dogs. Aaron has done a great job of self-promotion and getting connected to the homeschooling market. So Aaron works with our YA authors to get them into that market. So I think that's one reason Karen wants to do a little bit more with YA. So if you want, I will type it in right now. I don't, if you want to send me a proposal, send it here to this email address. It's very, very difficult, so it'll take a minute to get it. It's Larry@LarryLeech.com. And I just put it in the chat.
Thank
All
you.
right. Sure. So if you have and if you send me anything anytime this year, you don't have to do it in the next 10 minutes. Put in the subject line, Writers Chat 2024. That way I know that you were offered this invitation today.
Appreciate
I was
that.
reading, yeah, I was reading Norma's goodbye. So
Yeah.
How many words do you want for your YA?
85 to 90.
Well, you're still going for longer fiction then. That's nice. Nice to hear.
With YA, yeah. YA seems to be a little bit longer. Yeah.
Good. Good. All right. Well, we're getting close to the top of the hour, so we're going to turn off the recording, but of course, everyone's invited to stay for the after party. Really excited to always do that. Larry, thank you again. This was wonderful. I took 2 pages of notes. So it was just
Wow.
it was great. And thank you so much for coming on. And yes, applause all around.
Thank,
So
thank
glad.
you. I always enjoy it. Thank you.
Oh, thank you too. If you're watching the replay, we do invite you to join us any Tuesday morning, 11 o'clock Eastern, 10 o'clock Central, right here on Writers Chat. And you can also check out all of our videos on the Writers Chat Facebook page. Join the Writers Chat members Facebook group, which gives the login information to get on with us on Zoom. And like we talked about earlier, the episodes go up on YouTube on the Serious Writer channel. You can find us there. We have our own playlist with them. So we invite you to do that. And for everybody else, we'll see you next week and have a happy, happy, happy week writing. Bye-bye, everybody.